Hi, everybody. Today is March 10th, and this is the meeting for SIG architecture. Please be kind to each other. We are recording this meeting, so please be nice. So let's get started on what is in the agenda. Let me share my screen, and when I do, I won't be able to see if you guys say something on video. So, yell, please. Okay, where am I? Oops, stop share. This is the one, share. Yes. So I don't know who. Let's start with the easy one, right? Like what easy as in we already talked about it on the mailing list. But Clayton, why don't you please set the stage?
Sure. So there was a Merrick from Google shared an email with steering, talking about the concern about the health of the etcd project in terms of contribution reviewers. So there's a discussion that I think it is a little outside what SIG-Arch's normal role would be, but it's something we should be aware of and participate in the discussions in terms of etcd as a fundamental component of the Kubernetes architecture for many people. The obviously, staffing of the project, the health of that project is a CNCF issue. It's a Kubernetes in some sense issue, and it really is an architectural problem for the project to have a component that we fundamentally depend on. And so there may be some actions for us to consider potentially supporting a larger working group, making sure that we represent both problems and issues in the current project, but as well as architectural perspective on what are some longer term plans and challenges we have. SIG API machinery typically is the one who is most connected to the support of it. And so generally I would say SIG API machinery is the one that would directly be represented there, but we may have some broader topics. There's a number of groups that have raised historically over the last couple of years. Certainly we've talked multiple times around the possibility of alternative stores under Kubernetes. The Kind project started with K3s and explored a number of trade-offs. Their final design settled on shimming out a subset of the etcd APIs in front of generic databases. I've got a few folks at Red Hat who are exploring a more direct database integration with something like CockroachDB, which offers more compatible core semantics. So Steve Kuznetsov has been working on that for other ecosystem related projects, not directly for the core, but he's got some of the ED tests running, or he's got most of the ED tests running in Kind. And there's some broader discussion that I think as part of this effort we'll want to talk about, just to make sure that as a community and as a architecture, we're healthy. And maybe look for requirements and summarize some of the state of the ecosystem around what are the gaps in the current project, that objectives that SIGs have that can't be accomplished as is today. It's a good time to reflect on those. So anything I missed there, Dims, anything you can think of?
And no, I think you covered it pretty well. There was one aspect that keeps coming up related to pluggability of the KV store, which was I know that the SIG API machinery has talked a few times about it and has ruled it out, but I don't think we have like documented that. No, we are not. We'll never do this kind of thing that I can point people to, because a lot of people, it came up in the CNCF TOC as well. Some folks were asking, hey, why do we need to staff this, or why do we need to continue this? Why is it not pluggable? Since everything in Kubernetes is pluggable, so why are you all not?
Well, no, not everything in Kubernetes is pluggable.
Yeah,
Kubernetes community supports a reasonable amount of functionality that accomplishes user objectives. Yeah. Pluggability is not the primary goal of the system, but it is a strong principle that we adhere to. That one's a big one, because we said SIG API machinery did not have the bandwidth to truly explore alternative stores. And up until Kine, no one publicly had made a strong effort to address that. And there's, I think, I would say my perspective is there is lots of things we could do. The resources and the success of the community, and can we, keep existing users working, is the most important objective. What is going to deliver the most success, which I think, we all would agree on. There's nothing controversial about.
Right.
We shouldn't just randomly change something, because we still have a long tail of people who will have security issues. We made the choice to use etcd and to co-develop etcd alongside Kubernetes. We are accountable for the shape of etcd and the ecosystem of etcd to some degree. And so that's a factor. So I agree with you, but I've also caught people saying things like that I don't think is completely true. So.
Yeah, it slipped. Since we are among friends here, I stated it bluntly, or without. Since you all know what we are doing here. So what it looks like is two people from the HCD maintainers ended up in a company called Ava Labs, both Giho Lee and Higgs Fusion. I forget his real name. So those two ended up in Ava Labs, and now the same thing had happened once before, and then at that time, the CNCF TOC ended up reaching out to the CNCF GB, and somehow or other, Amazon ended up hiring Giho Lee and allowing Giho Lee to work on HCD. So this time as well, we need to raise the flag up the pole, and that is happening. We need to do it from multiple sides. So all of us should talk to our company representatives and raise it through that channel. And some of us are trying to put this on the GB calendar agenda for the next GB meeting. I think it is April 2nd week, I think. So we need to make sure that it is on the agenda. And if any of you have some more background information that you can share with me, hit me up on Slack. I know Wojtek, some folks in the Poland team are also working on HCD now. And how has their progress been?
Yeah, so Marek, in particular, Marek, who was escalating that is one of those. We also have Piotr working on that for last 2 years, and he is still helping with that, but he is now focused on other stuff. So it's more like helping and ensuring that Marek has reviews and stuff like that, and then consulting that. But it's more or less mostly Marek on our side. So yeah, we are. I think we are missing both manpower and some diversity, so that it's not only Google and it's not perceived as we are doing whatever we want and so on and so on.
And I was going to add here, so this is a really interesting point. As far as my perception is, Kubernetes is by far the dominant consumer etcd in the space. It'd be good to validate that, but it is a mono for the purposes of a high level estimation. It has a single consumer that drives a large chunk of the stability and reliability concerns, and then a smattering of individual use cases that are trending small. There is a lack of diversity of etcd consumers, which is itself a problem. From an architectural perspective, one of the reasons why, and Jordan and I talked about this for at least going back 6-7 years, talking about alternatives. Derek and I, we went through this early in Cube. We went through a set of assessments about, is there something better? etcd at the time was, through CoreOS, willing to design itself to solve Cube's problem. It's an open question about whether 7 years later, all of the same assumptions that led to that decision were there. And that's partially why through some of the prototyping work that Steve's doing and stuff that people have done with Kine, defining the formal semantics that we actually expect from our store as clients see it is a fundamental part of the health and this, like the stability of the project. Jordan and I had a back channel where some of Steve's PRs asking questions. Jordan, I'll use your sentence publicly, which was, we're all terrified of changing things at the fundamental level because they have so many implications. Over the years, the watch cache evolution has exposed semantic challenges. We have a surface area that's somewhat weak. Getting much better at formally defining the semantics we expose to customers, end users, the existing production applications through our APIs would benefit us no matter what. Some of the regressions that we've seen, we don't test enough and we rely on etcd to do the testing. And so we have kind of a weird split of, we ask etcd to provide something, we use it and we trust it, but then we are surprised sometimes with regression. That was some of Merrick's points. So there is some architectural, like clearly within the scope of SIG architecture, that there's some smoke here. And so I don't want to just fixate on solving the etcd problem as a project. I also want us to have some reasonable discussions, reliability, conformance, understanding the guarantees. We're documenting what we're actually providing to clients, which Steve and I have been enjoying figuring out which guarantees we're actually providing and what people should be allowed to do with regards to APIs. And so some of that all ties together. And I'd like to see more investment there and drive more investment there, not just in etcd.
Yeah, so unfortunately from VMware side, there isn't anybody who's like been tagged to work on etcd yet. Jordan, you have your hands up.
Yeah, I wanted to sort of split into three streams. One is what Clayton's talking about, like formalizing stuff, figuring out where we have gaps. From the things that Merrick raised in the email, it seemed like there were sort of two aspects. One is there are bugs that we know exist that haven't gotten traction getting fixed. And so like immediate term, if we could like list those and say why are our tests green if these are critical bugs that aren't solved, so we can at least know when we've sort of stabilized the current state.
Right.
So that was like the immediate, like it sounded, part of his email sounded like something is on fire and we don't have visibility to that. So I'm really interested in getting that stable because that's apparently a version that we already released, like 123. The email said is using a version that's buggy. The next one is sort of longer term, like features don't have good diversity of reviewers and reviewers with context. I don't have a lot of visibility to that, but I kind of like the idea of dependencies that are more or less feature complete and don't necessarily have to change a lot. And so that, I think it's worth asking the question, like, do we want a lot of change in this dependency or not? Maybe we do, maybe there are gaps and problems, but change for change's sake, I don't know that we necessarily want. So that's all I was going to say.
Yeah, one thing I had there was, traditionally etcd hasn't performed well on slow disks, right? And we always throw SSD at it.
Databases don't perform well on slow disks is a truism that it is amazing to me how bad the disks are that people expect to run databases on. So I would agree there.
No storage, no CPU, no memory, but all of my things have to work, right? So at this point, we've talked about it in steering private a little bit. We'll probably talk about it more in the next steering meeting. We already talked about it in the TOC meeting, and we're going to take it to GB as well. So getting manpower and trying to find the right set of people to work on this is definitely a top of priority. But then when people do show up, there needs to be some welcoming committee of some kind that'll put them to use and get them started off. I don't know how to do that with HCD. Sahadev has been there for a while on the HCD side, but I think Sahadev will probably need help. If we try to get some new people in. So the only other thing I can think of is like some of the companies have in-house HCD folks and getting some amount of bandwidth on their side to show up in the community and see how they can help with some of the things that Jordan was talking about, enumerating bugs and going around trying to figure out how to get them fixed. I think,
and Jordan's point actually is a good one, which is there's a part of me that's like, we should just take 3.4, fork it, fix bugs, and say, that's all I really care about for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
There's some definite, there've been wins in things. 3.5 went on a long time, if I remember correctly. And that was also a problem. Like, should have recognized that early on, that 3.5 was, it's been a while since I looked at this, so I might be misinterpreting some of it, but I was already a little nervous about the time between the previous version and this one. We shifted cadences and approaches. So we already, I think I would add a +1 to Jordan's caution about what are we actually looking for from a critical state dependency that is effectively invisible to our users, or should be invisible to our users operationally as well.
Yeah, and we were stuck there with the GRPC stuff too for 3.5, I think, if I remember right. Wojtek?
Yeah, I think I wanted to mostly say what Jordan and Clayton is doing. What we're saying is, I think we are missing a lot of tests on our side. Like in particular, the couple bugs that I'm aware were in HCD, although I don't know the details. But there are all about like membership changes. We are not really testing like reliably the HA setups of Kubernetes at all. Not even talking about like upgrades of HA setups and like upgrades together with like membership of HCD clusters. I think
now, I will say that is an area that Red Hat has invested in a lot. So like we're always running HA and we're always doing in-place upgrades, and we're always like we have invested in that. That might be an area where we can do more to bring that aspect upstream, and it might involve more test infrastructure. The upgrade tests, honestly, in upstream are another long-running architectural gap. Sorry, and that could be there could be some other things that we could bring to bear there as well. So thank you for bringing that up. I'll put that on my list of things to go follow up on.
Yeah, the upgrade test. I think one of the things that I was also mentioning, although it's in the like increasing the reliability bar proposal, like upgrade tests and upgrades in general, or other types of tests like chaos tests and so on and so on. Like in general, testing is something that we need to invest more, because there are too many gaps that we haven't, like the bugs that may slip over our releases
and there's like with OpenShift, like we ended up over the last 2 years or so doing a fairly sophisticated set of like invariant testing changes to the, like taking the upgrade tests as a source, fixing bugs. I was fairly remiss in bringing that infrastructure back, mostly because we were lacking a test environment upstream. And I think actually maybe the right way to go about that would be to fix the test infrastructure upstream and then move many of those components. Because I'm fairly proud of the upgrade testing we do. I haven't seen as many of the issues, but also Sam, for our side, was also controlling the pace of etcd upgrades. And I don't know that we actually got to that 3.5 point, because he was a lot more conservative than others were. And so maybe there's like, this is a place where getting more alignment on what we actually recommend and putting more weight under one arrow would actually benefit all of us. And everybody kind of is approaching etcd versioning upgrades a little bit differently. Can we bring a little bit more weight to bear on all of us doing the same thing? And I mean all of us in the vendor space, but also in the service space, making sure that we're really aligned and we're all seeing benefits of having shared investment.
So one question there, did we, I remember there was an external vendor that ended up kicking the tires of HCD, and they added Jepson Tests, I believe. I don't even know where they are, or if anybody has run them recently. So maybe, that might be another thing to poke at. But there is another problem that you brought out, which is SIG testing, right? Like we are under the water there with SIG testing in general. There aren't that many people, everybody's doing little pieces of testing, SIG testing, what it takes. And Aaron, we are waiting for Aaron to come back as well, one of the chairs. So SIG testing, I think, will need help, a lot of help. So that's the other issue. If you have to stand up new infrastructure, and we'll have to invest both in cadence infra and SIG testing to be able to do new stuff.
Yeah, so to be clear, like SIG API machinery is probably the closest owner of the use of etcd, and so I'd expect API machinery to be making sure versions that get pulled in are suitable. So for anyone on SIG testing hearing that and thinking, wait, what, more work for us? Like that's not really what Dims and I are saying. Like it's more a question of like, if API machinery wanted to close this test gap and needed to do an upgrade test or an HA test or some sort of test, is there a clear path for them to slot that in, or would that require a consult from SIG testing folks? Like how do we even run this test in our infrastructure?
Yeah, if I guess the leadership for this effort should be with SIG API machinery, because they need to add conformance tests that are missing and things like that. And if they need help saying, oh, the current things that are in pro are not enough, we need something new, then it goes to SIG testing. And if SIG testing wants additional infrastructure that need to be set up, whether in GCP or outside, then we bring in the cadence infra folks. But those three are definitely the SIGs that'll participate in the effort.
Yeah, and as Jordan noted, this is a SIG API machinery problem, and our elements here would be: are we doing enough to support SIG API machinery? Are we doing enough on the formal, like Jordan breaking into 3 problems was really good. The problems that SIG API machinery doesn't clearly own, do we have good owners for? Like we've got reasonably good scalability testing around etcd. The chaos testing aspect probably to some degree is SIG testing, but it also raises the issue, and then making sure that we just have good owners for those 3 problems. Jordan, was there another SIG that you can think of that was in your list that we, like scalability testing, API machinery, and
It's infra.
Infra is more in support of the testing. I mean, API machinery, I would say, owns the correctness aspects, and scalability owns the scale aspects.
Who owns the reliability aspects? API machinery.
In terms of like correctness, I would expect so.
So one of the red flags for me was, the dependency updates for HCD. SIG API machinery wasn't driving it, so it ended up with the code organization folks helping out with filing, the upgrade, filing the Go mod updates and things like that, and getting people through, like updating the vendor, updating the test infrastructure, all the YAML.
Yeah, I think that's more a sign like that we have test gaps though. Like we should be able to bump a version that claims to be compatible, and like if our tests pass, we should have confidence that we're good to go. And so I don't know that I would expect API machinery folks on every pull request that touches the etcd client necessarily. I would expect us to say, like, the way we're using it, we're exercising with tests, so we're confident that it works.
Right.
And the reliability aspects of like some of the stuff like leadership changes and management changes, like that is a fundamental etcd problem that may, like, our job would be to understand upgrades work, but I don't know that it necessarily fits within the remit of Cube to do deeper testing on coherency of how etcd is upgraded, at least based on the way that we recommend things. We have Cube admin, but as far as I know, most of the people providing distros are doing different things with etcd.
Mhm.
Yeah, so the particular issue that Merrick called out was a failover TLS issue. And we didn't have tests for it, and Cube didn't have, or etcd didn't have tests for it.
Client tests or server
Client.
server? Okay,
Client.
and then, yeah, anything client related, totally within our remit. I was thinking some of the membership correction, anything membership related that doesn't surface to us, that would be, we should be advocating for investment in the etcd project, probably, even if that's us, you know, folks who care about it from a Cube perspective. It seems,
So
internal.
it's like suitability for use, right? Like if we're planning on using the client in a HA way or a way that requires failover to work and TLS to work, like we need to make sure we either have test coverage or that there's test coverage upstream, and there was neither. And so like I think either of those places is a fine place to add that coverage. I'd want it upstream so that
How we use the client definitely seems in our remit. I mean, that seems, I would agree, because we can get that wrong, and I'd rather be safe on our side there.
Anyway, I commented on the thread particularly about that issue just because I want to stabilize the current state. The long-term conversations about like diversity and future stuff and features and alternative storage, like all of those are good conversations to have, but I want to make sure we sort of make users whole for 123.
So how do we pass this hot potato to AP Machinery, Jordan?
I think we add it to the agenda and tag them into the thread. I would probably add SIG Arch and SIG API Machinery into the thread and add it to the API Machinery agenda and talk through some of those things there.
Okay.
I can do that.
Thank you. Andrew, I see the nuclear hat. Nice.
Thanks.
Yeah. So anybody else had any thoughts about this? Derek, Kristen, Sergey?
I would echo everything Clayton said, and he and I were chatting before this and just ensuring that we're doing the right things to support the broader community.
Okay. Okay, so let's see what else we had. I don't know who added this one. Stale developer guide documentation and the 4+ year issues. And did anybody on the call add those 2 items? Going once, going twice.
Honestly, any issues that survived 4 years is probably something we're still worried about. It just, it hasn't crossed the threshold of blowing people up right now. It's the survivorship bias on issues. I'm always hesitant to close some of the older ones.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the first one is the API conventions. Put does not create new resource.
I
From
haven't thought about that in 6 years. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the short version of this is server-side apply allows upsert. So that is probably the only thing I would expect to change here. So if we document that as part of server-side apply, that's a good step to take.
Okay, so that is one thing that we can add. Do you want to type what you wrote there, Jordan? Yeah. I mean, you said there. Then the next, let me open up the next one. Determine canonical list of runtime dependencies for Kubernetes. Yes. this build time coordinator Docker. Yeah, not gonna happen, right?
Yeah, this doesn't have enough. This is like a good idea. I think we need like a real reason to do this, and if nobody cares about it. If nobody is jumping up and down on it, this one definitely fits in the
Yeah,
find a suitably motivated
right.
consumer.
I remember at one point we did write down the list of things that the kubelet needs to be present.
That one was actually really important for distributions, and that maybe even is like a we're under tested there. I actually don't know what our vulnerability to that is as a project. If someone has subtle things, a lot of people tend to try to be very careful about that stuff. We haven't had a significant regression as we've moved more to GRPC plugins. Some of the new things that might have introduced more churn have not had as much of that, but yeah, I don't think this one is, I don't know that this one has a concrete purpose anymore, 2234.
Yeah, I'll comment on it later. Oh, this is from you, Jordan. Review guidelines.
This was mostly a scratch pad for topics that weren't currently fleshed out or we ran across in API reviews. I have not reviewed this recently, so it's possible some of this stuff got added in the meantime. It's still relevant-ish, but it's probably not actionable or specific enough for someone to like assign and resolve.
Yes. Okay.
Like all 4-year-old issues.
Oh, this one is talking. Annotation, namespaces, label. We did do something here, right? We kind of like listed which kind of annotation will need API reviews or something like that.
This came up, I swear this just came up in a triage yesterday. Oh yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, David was going to take a stab at updating docs around expectations for structure of these. Yeah, that happened yesterday.
Oh, good. There's at least one of them we are making some. Okay, let's look at this one. So Warby tables. Yeah. So Christian was trying to do something here. Are you on the call, Christian?
I'm here. Let me expand my screen. I'm sorry.
No worries. Oops.
Yeah, I can pick that up. I'm sorry. I somehow lost track of doing that, so I can take a look at that.
Yes, thank you. It's closed. Maybe we should reopen.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is done, that's done. So the last thing that is left is yeah. So let's take a look at our annual reports, and if folks want to drop off, feel free to. But let me throw the URL in the chat. And I'm going to stop my screen share because I can't see your faces. So, okay. So, like, let's start from the beginning, right? What did you do in the last year that we were proud of?
We survived.
Yeah, we're still alive.
I think conformance progress is a definite win this year. I'd say that's a good one to call out. Just continuing to close those gaps.
Which one was that, Clayton?
Conformance.
Yeah.
And something like Rion can
Yeah.
help. Because we talked about that in some of the other updates. I think it's a good summary for the year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of details below in the sub-project stuff, but hoisting that to the top as a highlight, I think is great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate the recognition. It is the dirty dishes that we're doing.
Exactly. What initiatives are you working on that are not being tracked in KEPs? Well, this HCD stuff that we were talking about is not in a KEP.
For enhancements, I'm working on a KEP survey just to get some community feedback so that we can kind of guide some of the work that we want to do this year and kind of be in line with what people need. So that's something that is being worked on now.
Survey for enhancements.
One thing that comes to mind is like working with all of our not all, but a lot of our dependencies to like cut down transitive stuff. So something just landed today that I'm super excited about. We got an update to the Cobra library that dropped the Viper library as a dependency, which means that we can drop, I think, 12% of Kubernetes transitive dependencies with no code changes. So that's not represented in a KEP because it's not like it's a change upstream, but we're working on it and it's helping. So
yes, we are definitely not tracking them with KEP.
what else?
Okay, let's go to the next one. Rian, you filled this one, right? You found some of the old KEPs. The warning API from Jordan, the clarification of status, I think, Clayton, you were involved in that. Then the release cadence stuff that we ended up doing 4 to 3. I think there was a survey out for from SIG release folks on like how we are doing with it now. Do people want to go back to 4 or something like that? So
The things I had most top of mind were actually things that are going in 124. So I got confused. I was like, wait, we're doing more than that. So like the not making beta APIs non-breaking by not having them on by default, and lengthening or strengthening the GA deprecation policy. Those both landed this year. So we'll highlight those for our 2022 report.
didn't we add a CA job where we switched off alpha or something like that, Jordan? That was last year. Making sure that we can run conformance tests without alpha.
That was 119.
That was 119. Okay.
Yeah, it's been 2 years.
Okay, it's too old then. What areas or sub-projects does your group need the most help with? What do we call out here?
Derek, are you looking at commits or pull
Yeah, I
requests?
was just in the background. I'll put my camera on. In the background, I was just, I always think a lot of times this group is looked at for providing like broad conventional guidance. And so like, I always think of like the API conventions document as like the clear system of record a lot of people source. And so I was just curious, hey, how many changes did we make to that in 2021? A rough count of commits was 23, but I didn't go deeper than that. But I felt
I actually pulled that out in the sub-project stuff below. So there were really only 2 key updates. One was around object references and one was around spec and status. So the object references one had a lot of commits stacked, and there were a couple, like 2 or 3 PRs.
What about
there was a lot of iteration there.
what about the API upgrade guidance stability? Like, I feel like that's a clarifying and continuing to clarify our position as SIG on the project's guarantees is
Are you
worth
talking
noting.
about the GA being permanent?
GA
That
being
happened.
permanent? What?
That happened in 2022. I'm
Did we
saving
not
that.
do anything in 2021? Have you, Jordan, have you already pulled all this info? Why don't you just summarize it for us and then tell us?
I already updated the API guide and stuff in the subproject down below.
But do you want to pull that
API
up? Do you feel,
You
that
want to put that up to number 1 and number 2, right?
yeah, the pulling up is what I'm asking about.
Those two were the only ones that landed in 2021 that were notable. There were tweaks and typo fixes and stuff, but the object references and the spec status distinction.
Maybe the positive spin on this is that our architecture is still proving relatively sound to present problems, and that we only had to make that set of changes.
Mhm.
That's growth hacking, Derek, and we
Yes.
don't support that.
All right, I'm going to go back on mute and not try to be helpful in this exercise.
No, don't go, Derek.
Do we feel overall the stability of Kubernetes improved in 2021?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe there's an element here which is like SIG Arch, like if we could legitimately point to a couple of things, reliability, whether it's tightening our guarantees. We've got all of our core APIs in V1. Like I think it's kind of the same point, but it is a stable foundation that should last for another 10 or 15 years. Like I don't know that we'd actually say it like that, but like we're trying to get that in place, which for the first 7 years, 8 years of the project, that was not it was a goal, but we hadn't achieved it. It was 2021 when we actually crossed that threshold.
I think 2020. I think 119 was when all the core ones hit GA.
V1 beta 1 of CRD is still rippling through the ecosystem. So I do feel that, like, I would say a significant perceptual thing is the Cube ecosystem went to V1 CRD, which was the last of the significant ones, right? Or was Ingress after? Was 119?
119 was when the GA ones graduated. 122 was when the
beta
betas
was
got
removed. And that was actually what triggered the change. And I mean, like, I gotta be honest, I'm still dealing with people who are like, what do you mean I have to go find, I can't, it blew up my cluster or whatever. So, but I do think that we crossed that threshold in 2021. Maybe that's like something I can like draft up like a quick, like, the ecosystem moved to V1 APIs in 2021, and we managed it with a reasonable, and we learned some things that will improve future changes, but we are now on a stable foundation of APIs in a broad sense across the whole ecosystem, across the deployed fleets, and leading edge contributors have passed that threshold, or leading edge deployments have passed through that, and 2022 will test how well we bring the long tail over. I'm not getting a lot of positive warm vibes from the room here.
I'm trying to write a thing.
I'm just thinking of what else we need to do, right? Like, so you said something, right? We haven't had to update the architecture very much. I don't know if Derek said that or Clayton said that. But one thing that I see more and more right now is like, how do you have a bunch of Kubernetes clusters act as one, right? Whether you want to call it as a multi-cluster or multi-cluster across multiple cloud providers or things like that. There is plenty of innovation that is happening in the community, and we haven't had a say, or we haven't really done any work on that other than
we're in the innovation period, and it's obviously a problem. It is a concern and a challenge across the ecosystem. What can Kubernetes do in 2022?
Right.
To
I know Google is doing a bunch of things. I know Red Hat is doing a bunch of things, but we as a community, we haven't had that many KEPs or something. I remember the unique ID for a cluster kind of KEPs are there, but other than that, we didn't really do anything.
What are the things that Kubernetes ecosystem can do to assist bringing that innovation? to everyone equitably, or or to bring that to bring that away that like amplifies, multiplies the ecosystem.
Right.
I think that's the role of the community, is to be the how do we make everybody as successful as possible, or allow people to be successful,
right,
and support them in that mission.
I kind of like the working group batch stuff, how it went. A lot of people were doing some scheduling stuff, and they went away and they did their own projects, Volcano or whatever, right? And then folks said, okay, we did a bunch of things, but I think that some of those things can be common, and let's push that back into Kubernetes. And now they started working on both at the CNCF level and as a working group in Kubernetes. So I like that pattern. So probably need to do something similar for multi-cluster work, I think, also going forward. But there is no section here where we can write this. So let me just scroll back down. Okay, so let's go back to where do we need the help most from? So do we need help in, so we have 4 or 5 sub-projects, right? Like, do you all feel that any of them are not doing enough, or they need more people?
I heard a lot of complaints about PR reviews. So whenever it's enhancement phase, there is not enough PR reviewers.
So PRR, are you talking about PRR, or are you just PR itself?
PRR, yeah.
Yes, okay.
That
So
one.
PRR, we need to grow more reviewers and approvers. How about API reviews, Jordan?
I've got a group of 5 folks. I think Elena and Abdullah and Aldo and Michelle and Hawaii that have been picking stuff up. So they're doing first passes on things. So that's kind of a nice cross section across SIGs. That's going okay. Throughput is pretty solid. I'm not sure about the other API reviewers. I'll let Clayton weigh in. Tim seems to be pretty solid at. See, I'm gonna turn off my camera before I started eating, but appreciate your transparency and openness. Yeah, Tim seems to be pretty quick on turnarounds. I'm not sure if he's pulling in other folks or not. So I'm trying pretty hard to involve other people when I'm doing reviews.
But Jordan, the feature freeze is always like 2 weeks before feature freeze, like you have to do a whole bunch of things, right? Like everybody comes to you for reviews, especially in the last week before a feature freeze.
It's been better the last couple of releases, actually. Like specifically for API stuff. I mean, it's always crazy before code freeze, but the expectations that people are going to open a big API change like 3 days before, like I'm just not seeing that. People have those open further in advance.
Yeah, and there is like what I see is it's significantly, like what was peak bad was like 113 or 114, where it would be a day before the rush. We're definitely down in terms of volume, and then I maybe see a few that they get lost in the shuffle and they bubble up, but they're not bubbling up the last day, and people don't have. People are not, the mindset has changed a little bit, which is I have to rush this in at GA or at freeze to, I can wait for the next release and I'll try to do better. And then some reviewers are not as good at making sure that then gets turned around when open. So that's something I think.
If anything, I think the action item for SIG leads or sub-project leads is make sure your SIG has a couple of people identified as contact points or like up and comers for API reviews. And then any API change or review in your area is going to get those people tagged in, and that's the takeaway. So we have that in the owner's aliases. I use that a lot. I know some of the other reviewers use that.
So how about conformance, Rian? Are we doing okay with this, the speed at which you are getting reviews?
Honestly, no. We have one sitting now for I think 3 weeks, if not 4, that we're just looking for a review. So there is not enough bandwidth there. It's a SIG apps one. They're aware of it. We discussed with them. They know about it, but they're totally snowed under. They don't have capacity.
Right.
And I have another one that I'm going to put in today, also requiring SIG apps, because we're really trying to. The last 2 releases, we've been hacking at their stuff to get it cleared out. So job APIs, we want to clear out this release, and I'm blocked with it if they can't review. So on a review point, it's difficult.
So a question here to kind of like leads here is, Clayton, I know Machi got tagged with doing SIG apps work, right? In addition to, with Jordan, is there anybody on the Google side that is interested in SIG apps? There are a bunch of people listed, but they're not doing reviews.
I don't have a name at my fingertips. I can try to rustle that up.
Okay.
Machi actually took on, and I've been to SIG apps this week, and he said he'll take it on. He'll look at it, but I know I'm going to throw him another one this week, so
Yeah,
I feel bad for him.
There is some chatter on the SIG apps Slack channel also saying that people are trying to get into the SIG, but they are not, they are not able to, talk to anybody who's still doing SIG apps stuff.
So I think for the annual report, we can say it is, you can put it mildly, it is a little hard because of, and I think part of the reason all the nice stuff is gone. So it's all the things that requires a lot of discussion and thinking, and it's good example. I watched the cookie jar, and the kids take all the nice ones and they leave the ones that got slightly burnt in the oven for last. So, so we've got the burnt cookies for last, and those are really the hard ones to review. So it makes the reviewing more tricky as well. So you can't just rustle up anybody.
Yeah, additional folks with context to help make progress.
And we're almost there. I think there's 51 endpoints by the end of this release. We have 40 or something left. So it's really the bottom of the bottom that's left.
Right. So in terms of community health stats, what do we care? What do we measure? At this point, I don't know. A number of meetings we cancel without an agenda.
And remind me again, which direction is the positive direction there?
Good one.
I'm
going to put it here.
No. I mean, I look at things like regressions, number of backports, number of dependencies. Those are the types of things I'm looking at, but I'm not tracking those in a disciplined way.
Right.
It's more like a release to release, like.
Right, we care about, let me add it.
Yeah.
Across release boundaries, right? Okay, we can come back to this. Yeah, this is probably cookie cutter stuff that I can go through. We don't have special training. Yes, no, maybe. Okay. Any thoughts here? 3, 4, 5, and 6. Anything you want to add? Otherwise, I'll fill in some stuff later.
I mean, for the special training, I think PRR and API reviews both have dedicated docs for that.
Okay. PRR and API review has dedicated docs that can help folks get started. What we need is for SIG leads to send people our way, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Does the group have contributors from multiple companies? Yes.
And number 3 for the contributing markdown, I started just the first lines for it, but I'll look at some other SIGs and rustle up something. It's kind of a modified README, actually, looking at what everybody else has did.
Yeah, I'll put your name there. Yeah. Okay. Are there ways end user companies, end users / companies can contribute? They are not full-time support. What would they work on and why? We need help across all the sub-projects. That have well-defined ongoing work with onboarding guide doc. Okay. So membership, I think I can rustle up some stuff.
Membership numbers that's on there, I took off Slack and off the mailing list. So I kind of made that up. And then if you have looked at, there is some comments where I got the people that I've got there. I said there's 20 reviewers and approvers, and there's some where I got it. So I took that from the owner's files. And so.
Nice. Thank you, Rian. So sub-projects, I think, Jordan, you filled this one up, architecture and API reviews. I think conformance, Rian, you filled this up. Oikiki, did you add, you can add something for enhancements here? Then production readiness, John was going to take a look tomorrow. Code organization, I'll add some stuff here. So in terms of working groups, we haven't really talked to WG API expression in a while, or ever, for that matter.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one of the things this annual review is intended to surface. If there are working groups that we're supposedly participating in or sponsoring or whatever. So what I would probably do is start a thread copying SIGArch and workgroup API expression and say like, hey, we were doing our annual review. What's up with you all? And is there anything we should know about or anything you want to like fold back into API stuff or like what's going on? And so they have the same thing on their end when they're doing their annual report, like, hey, did you give status to your stakeholder SIG? If not, maybe do that. So
same for us. Okay.
So right now that's just a link to their annual report, and I think that's fine for this doc. But this is a good prompt to check in.
Right. Yeah, and we need to get back to our previous, the way we used to do, where each sub-project would give an update every, so we have, something on the agenda, right? So we would also add the working groups, come and talk to us as well. Okay, I think time's up. Thanks a lot, everyone, and see you next time.